Prime Minister Narendra Modi's upcoming meeting with US President Donald Trump at the White House on 13th of February comes amid high-stakes discussions on trade, strategic partnership, and of course, a geopolitical realignment. The visit follows Trump's renewed focus on trade deficits and aggressive tariff policies. That creates both challenges and opportunities for the India-US bilateral relationship. Trump has already imposed tariffs on Canada and Mexico, which he's put on a pause for a month upon assurance that both these countries will meet his demands. He's got two demands, one to counter illegal fentanyl and the other to counter illegal immigrants. He's also hit China with tariffs and is threatening to do the same with Europe. So how does India navigate this new trade paradigm under Trump 2.0? Trade deficit reduction seems to be dominating Trump's agenda. He's pushing to narrow America's $26 billion trade gap with India. The White House is seeking increased Indian purchases of US-made security equipment. He also wants increased energy imports by India from the United States. Trump has made it very clear after his phone call with Modi last month that he wants India to purchase more American weapons. The F-35 fifth-generation fighter jet could be on India's shopping list. India also recently reduced customs duties on select imports, favoring US products and also signaling an openness to amend the country's nuclear liability laws. In fact, the previous national security advisor under Biden, Jake Sullivan, was in India back in January when he lifted 3 Indian entities from the blacklist of nuclear tech transfer in the civilian nuclear space. Immigration management is, of course, a top agenda for Trump. He raised illegal migrants' concerns with his Indian negotiators. India has committed to repatriating undocumented migrants who have been identified as Indian citizens. In fact, Foreign Minister Jaishankar, who was on a visit to Washington last month to attend Trump's inauguration, has said that India would welcome any Indian citizen provided he or she can provide necessary papers. A first flight carrying Indian illegals already arrived from San Antonio in Texas to Amritsar. Defense cooperation will focus on advancing the critical and emerging technologies ISET, which was something that was announced a few years ago. It is an NSA-level dialogue, an initiative for critical emerging technologies, and also expanding the Quad, which had been elevated to the ministerial level under Trump and to the heads of government level under Biden. The United States aims to ease defense export controls, which are conditional on India buying more American weapons. Energy security discussions will also be expanded as US oil and gas exports and potential nuclear power collaboration with India will be on the anvil. India's recent $60 billion energy import commitment provides some negotiation leverage when Modi meets Trump. But the unpredictability of Trump is going to shake the very underlying stability of the relationship. Trump's threat of 100% tariffs against BRICS countries who are seeking dollar alternatives is a big one that India needs to consider. India, by being part of BRICS, willy-nilly could attract Trump's anger. But his threat against BRICS faces implementation hurdles. Currently, there is no BRICS currency yet, and making any kind of immediate sanctions on a non-existent currency is unlikely. India's BRICS participation also focuses more on multipolarity rather than trying to displace the dollar. In fact, the Indian rupee is not even among the top 5 most traded currencies in the world. And then there is a great degree of US-India trade interdependence. More than $90 billion of bilateral trade in the first 9 months of 24-25. That hems in together both countries. Yet it is in this very same trade of $90 billion plus, which by the end of the financial year could top $120 billion, it is in this trade that Trump would try and seek the most amount of concessions. The US could target some of the high-value Indian exports if the trade talks were to falter. Petroleum products constitute the biggest export to America. In the year 24-25, it was close to $18 billion plus, making up about 30% of India's exports to the United States. Drug formulations are the second biggest export to the US, particularly for the manufacture of cheap generic drugs to the tune of almost $8 billion. That is 40% of India's trade to to the United States. And of course, there is also gems, jewelry, particularly in rough-cut diamonds, which are then polished and exported to the US. That is a big-ticket export item to America. A quarter of India's exports to America, about $6.5 billion, is in gems and jewelry. So there's pharmaceuticals, gems and jewelry, refined petroleum. These all face the highest risk because of established US domestic production capabilities. And this is without even going into software exports, which are a huge item of export from India to the US. In fact, in the fiscal year 23-24, India exported up to $200 billion of software products and services to the United States. India also has a problem with the H-1B visas. There are very limited numbers, 65,000 or so, which are issued every year, a bulk of which, more than two-thirds of which, are cornered by Indian IT companies. That too is a pet peeve in the Trump administration. So India-US merchandise trade restricted to just goods alone, reached over $93 billion in the first 9 months of 2024, from April to December. Indian exports to the US grew by 5.5% to almost $60 billion. The top category of products that are being exported from India to the US is refined petroleum at $18 billion. India has consistently reduced its dependence on cheap Russian oil, which it had procured in a massive way since the beginning of the Ukraine war. Right now, Russian oil accounts for less than a quarter of India's oil purchases, and Trump will be hoping that purchases from American oil companies would move further up into double digits. There's also generic drugs which are used in the pharma industry to the tune of almost $8 billion. Trump's new health czar, RFK Jr., is not a big fan of big pharma. Indian exports of generics could be another pressure point in the trade relationship. Overall, the United States remains India's largest export destination, absorbing almost 20% of all of India's total outbound shipments. And on the other way around as well, Trump has had a pet peeve about high Indian import duties on American products. He made a big deal regarding Harley-Davidson motorcycles in his first term. India preemptively addressed Trump's long-standing motorcycle tariff grievance through the budget 2025. So far, motorcycles under 1600cc, the duty has been cut from 50% to 40%, and for motorcycles above 1600cc, the duty, which was 75% earlier, has now been cut to 50%. This also follows a decision in 2019 by India when Trump was making a noise around Harley-Davidson. The duty at that time was 100%, so you had to pay double the cost in India while buying a Harley-Davidson. That had been cut to 50% after Trump's initial complaints. The latest reduction will make Harley-Davidsons, which are made in India, about 12 to 18% cheaper. Potentially, that could double the annual sales of the company to about 5,000 units. Both leaders will be seeking deliverables which will balance their domestic priorities and also show to their respective countries that this is the defining partnership of the 21st century. Trump's needs are very clear. He needs to demonstrate trade wins before the 2026 midterm elections. He also needs to demonstrate opposition to counter China through the Quad, for which he needs India. For Modi, his goals are to secure technology transfer, particularly when it comes to pending defense deals like the General Electric Hindustan Aeronautics Limited jet engine deal for the Tejas Mark II indigenous fighter jets, which have been long delayed. Modi will also want to stabilize the dollar and rupee dynamics, balance out trade so that pleases Trump, and most importantly, to position India as a reliable US strategic partner that can take on China. The Modi-Trump chemistry will prove to be crucial in navigating these complexities. The ability to compartmentalize their disputes while at the same time advancing shared interests, whether it's in artificial intelligence, clean energy, and maritime security, that will determine whether the Modi-Trump meeting will actually be a fundamental reset of the India-US relationship, or will it be just another photo opportunity.